Jordan Peterson was very public about his all beef diet.
Jordan is someone who was a bit of a religious fanatic on the low-fat diet, who then switched to the other extreme and became a sort of carnivore fundamentalist. And I'm against diets that are a bit like fundamental religions.
If you'd like more life-changing guests on the show, make sure you like this video, subscribe to the channel and turn the notification bell on.
So Tim, this is a Disruptors podcast first in nearly 1,000 episodes. We've got a Rob Moore's wife round.
How exciting.
So, is organic food worth the money?
It depends. Depends how much money you've got. If you're rich, absolutely is. If you're on the other end of the scale, I think you've got to weigh up the pros and cons. And it might be particularly worthwhile if you're feeding a young child or you're pregnant. They're the times you're most vulnerable. And interestingly, if you are predominantly a vegetarian, it's even more valuable in order to reduce the amount of herbicides and pesticides you're ingesting. So I think the jury's out, and I sort of go into this in my book Spoon-Fed and Food for Life in quite a bit of detail, and it's hard to get definitive data. The observational epidemiology data, when you follow people like a large group of 80,000 people in France who ate organic food against those who didn't, they ended up having less cancers and less heart disease, living longer. Some of that might be the bias of people who want to buy healthy food, have other health lifestyle benefits. And if you look at the detailed studies, there's no doubt organic food has a fifth of the amount of herbicides and pesticides. And some of these have been associated, things like glyphosate, Roundup, which is everywhere, which all of us ingest. Even organic vegetarians are having lots of it all our lives. Increased rates of some cancers and some immune problems. And some Californian courts have awarded damages of several billions for some rather rare cases of cancer. But there's no clear evidence really that the nutrient benefits are much greater. They're slightly greater, but not much greater. So I think for me, the main reason is to buy organic is to know that you're getting less pesticides, less herbicides, which are affecting your gut microbes, because we know that they've been shown to be pretty safe against human genes, and they just knock out plant and weed genes, but they do affect our gut microbes. So in an ideal world, we'd all be eating organic foods. So if you've got the money, I think it is worthwhile. If you're sort of on the breadline, I think you're better off just choosing as many good fruits and vegetables as you can and take your chances.
How much meat do you eat?
I eat meat once or twice a month. And
Harry and I eat more than that in a day.
Usually when my wife, who's a Belgian carnivore, says you have to try this. This is amazing. And I did give up meat completely for several years, but I started to develop a vitamin B12 deficiency. And so rather than popping pills, I eat meat once or twice, usually in a really nice restaurant where it's really good quality meat. I will never eat poor quality, never eat processed meats. And I think it's important, if I'm writing about food as well, to be able to taste foods that everyone can enjoy. But I do think it's important for everyone to realise that the most important thing we can do for the planet is to eat less meat.
So you're doing it for the planet, not for your own health?
I'm doing it for both.
Okay.
And as I explain in the book, I think eating a small amount of meat...
Tell us which book.
Food for Life.
Yeah.
In the book Food for Life, I explain that eating the meat itself is not necessarily dangerous for people if it's of high quality. Processed meats, cheap ones, cheap cuts made in factories of bits stuck together, chicken nuggets, poor quality ham, etc., poor quality sausages, have been shown definitely to be bad for your health, for cancers, heart disease. Good quality meat is not really been shown conclusively to be very bad for you in modest amounts. If you eat a lot of it, it is. And I think there's nothing wrong with having meat, say, once or twice a week, without to have optimal health. The main point of me reducing meat is to have more plants on my plate.
Right.
If you've got a big steak on your plate, you put your potatoes there, you've got your peas, there's no room for anything else, there's no imagination of anything else. You're going to be depriving your gut of something useful. Your gut doesn't really do much with a bit of meat. There are a few microbes that eat that protein and the fat, but mostly, it's the plants you want for gut health. So I always think you've got to think, I think, in nutrition rather than this is good, this is bad. You've got to try and think of a holistic approach to what are you eating on that plate that day, what are you eating, overall, all those 3 meals that day, and how are you eating that week. And I think we need to move away from this idea of this is good, this is bad, and because people get put off if they said, well, I can't eat meat, I'm not going to, follow that diet. Whereas if you just said, well, actually, just have a few vegetarian meals. If people just ate half the meat they normally do, we have a massive effect on climate change. You don't have to do like me. You don't have to be a vegan or vegetarian. I think just this gradual, what we call flexitarian move towards appreciating plants and realizing that's actually healthy for you and saving the planet.
Harry, I was planning for us to, have you seen there's a burger and lobster just round the corner? That's what I thought we were going tonight. Lettuce and tomato, that's where we're going. Right, this isn't my wife's question. I'm going to sneak a couple in here because there's a couple of fascinating high-profile cases I'd like to ask you about. So first off, Jordan Peterson was very public about his all-beef diet, and he kept banging on about how that was really good for him. What do you think about an all-beef diet?
I think for most people it's going to be very bad news. I think there are a few people who can tolerate it, maybe Jordan is one of them, but I'm against diets that are a bit like fundamental religions, and Jordan is someone who was a bit of a religious fanatic on the low-fat diet, who then switched to the other extreme and became a sort of carnivore fundamentalist. And I think anyone who has these rules like super keto or anything else is missing the point. We're omnivores, we're designed to eat all kinds of foods, but mainly plants. And all the evidence suggests is the bigger the diversity of plants we can get into our guts, the healthier we're going to be, the better our immune system. Now, some people find keto diets, carnivore diets, good for losing weight, but everything's good for losing weight short term. And yes, lots of meat does suppresses your hunger for perhaps a bit longer than just eating carbs. But it's super bad, it's terrible for the planet. It's about the worst thing you could do if you have any sort of conscience about climate change. And it's long-term really bad for your gut health for most people. You can say, well, Eskimos and various other people have adapted to have those diets. And there will be a small percentage of the population that do tell me, come up to my meetings, that I've been eating, 3 steaks a day for the last 20 years, and look at me, I'm marvellous. I say, well, there's plenty of, opposites that aren't. And so generally, yeah, fine exceptions, but don't try and copy them.
Mm. And then I found this, I shouldn't really say amusing, but I did find it amusing. But virtually every entrepreneur or personal development person I know has been to a Tony Robbins seminar. And I think he's done a lot of great things in that space. And he would really push the no meat, just fish. I've simplified it because he wouldn't have said no meat, just fish, but, you know, he ate a lot of fish for decades. And then a revelation on a podcast, he said he nearly died of mercury poisoning. So I guess a lot of people who are getting rid of meat are eating a lot of fish. What do you think about that?
If you'd asked me 5 years ago, I'd say that was a great idea. But since researching Food for Life and writing the fish chapter, I completely changed my mind. And there's no doubt that on two fronts. One, an environmental front, most of the fish we eat is farmed fish. And to feed a farmed fish, you've got to basically give it 1.5 little fish from the sea to keep it alive. So we are dramatically denuding our oceans and destroying huge bits of fantastic oceanside areas in the Far East, etc. And as you said, you can overdose on mercury if you eat large fish. Generally, small fish, that's not the case. But the other reason I've changed my mind is that I don't think the evidence that fish is that good for you is that strong. I don't think it's harmful for you if you don't have too much mercury in it, but you know, it seems to be around a 10% advantage for health, which, given the cost of fish and the cost to our environment, means it's vastly overrated as a health food. There are some exceptions to that, and I'm really big on shellfish, and I think the British don't eat enough mussels and clams and oysters, which are...
Does lobster go in that?
Lobster is more of a sort of sea insect, isn't it, really? So I think it's halfway there. But, you know, again, if you can find a sustainable lobster farm that doesn't sort of take more to feed it than they actually get out of it, it's possible. But we have but we might be eating land insects more than we are water insects in the future. But I think shellfish are fantastic. They're non-sentient, so they don't feel pain. They are filters of all the pollution in the water, and God knows we need that in this country. With our, if you ever go surfing and we have terrible water, so they're filtering, and they are totally sustainable, and they may have some modest health benefits. They've got protein and other minerals in them as well, and they taste great. So, but I think just buying lots of prawns from Vietnam or Thailand that are made in atrocious conditions that are destroying the environment there, thinking it's healthy for you, that's something we need to change. So, fish as a treat, but not as a regular thing that the government tells us we have to eat at least 2 portions a week to be healthy. Because it all goes along with these studies of omega-3. You've heard of omega. Do you take any omega-3 supplements?
I think, do I, honey? You make up all my supplements, don't you?
It's a new one that you've ordered and I do put in.
Oh, okay, yeah. I got like a big box of pills every morning.
Yeah, well, they're all a waste of time.
Testosterone. They're all a waste of time.
Well, I don't know about the testosterone.
No, that was a joke. That was a joke.
You might need that. I don't know.
If you enjoyed this content and you want to watch my full interrogation of Tim Spector, you can watch it here. You will not believe some of the great guests we have got coming soon on the show, so make sure you like the video, subscribe to the channel and turn the notification bell on. And remember this, if you don't risk anything, you risk everything.